Well, hello there again, friends. Today is 6/18/2022, and today is the Odin Project Vlog Day 121. And today I got through completely through dynamic user interface interactions, 34% complete with the program, or with this section, and I got down here to image slider. So to be fully transparent with you guys, I started this and then I stopped. And let me tell you and show you why. We're gonna have a little fun in this video, so I'm gonna get my artistic ability out and paint and just kidding, and show you how terrible I am. So anyway, I will let you guys read the description here, but basically here's my thought process going in. What I did was I created. Okay, so let me see. Let me see if I can draw this. It's just different than what we normally do, but just something fun here. So here's my viewport. So what I was trying to do, and was able to successfully do, is I made a scroller. I called it a slider, about like this. And this was a div with a border so I could see it, right? And then my idea was, based on what I wrote down in pseudocode and based on the text, I was going to have different these be images or separate divs, and each one of these would have had a different picture in it. And you know, this would be a div. This would be a div. This would be a div, and then inside the div is an image. So there'd be an image in here, an image in here. You get the point. And then there was going to be the dots down here for the slider, or to click to be able to go to the correct, to basically bring focus to the correct card or picture. And then there's going to be an arrow over here. Can't draw that one. And an arrow over here to go forward and back. So I got the div created, I got this basic HTML structure set up, but then I got stuck. And so what do you do when you get stuck? You go to Google. Excuse me. So I went to Google and started looking around, and I found W3 Schools had a really nice slider, but it didn't act like this. Their slider was completely different. So we'll just do new here, don't save. Their slider example was the entire viewport, and they had an arrow here, an arrow over here, and they had 3 dots down here, and the image took up the entire space. And then you would hit the arrow, and then this would call the function to go forward, this would call the function to go back, and then there would be function calls on here and here and here. Okay, so I took a look at that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I implemented it. And this is after I already created the project in GitHub and all this, because doing my own thing, but then I found this on the web. And so I was like, okay, well, I literally copied everything line for line into my project from this example, because I liked it better, it met the requirements, most of them anyway. I liked it better than my idea. And so when this one picture would take up the entire viewport, and so you hit the arrow, it go to the next picture, just cleaner, right? So I copied all that code over, but there's so many things in W3 Schools, nothing against them, just there's so many things that were not best practice. Like they had on-click JavaScript code inside of an HTML element tag. Like for instance, these were spans, and there was on-click JavaScript inline in the HTML, and as we've learned in Oden, that's not a best practice. So anyway, I was like, I took it as a challenge, and I literally spent the next day and a half trying to refactor that to get that to be an add event listener in JavaScript only, and keep, as we've always done, keep JavaScript and JavaScript and HTML and don't mix them. Well, I was running into all kinds of problems. The add event listener, I was looping through, they were adding to the dots just fine, but then I'd click the dot, it wouldn't do anything. So Um, what I did, and I kind of traced my steps backwards. I tried using um, the pause break tool in DevTools to step me through, but it acted like the event listener didn't exist. Well, what was happening, and after some Google research on it too, is that the function call that it was calling was changing the DOM structure inside of that function. So when I clicked this, it would go in and do a bunch of DOM manipulation on the shading of these buttons and the picture, which works well if you have on-click in your HTML. But what happens is when you try to add an event listener to DOM that's already changing, it overwrites the event listener. So the event listener never fired, essentially. And so when I clicked, it would do nothing. And so it took me forever to figure it out. So lesson learned for that. But after that, that was late last night, and I didn't want to put out a video last night, and I just slept on it to see if I wanted to keep tackling it or just move on. And I've decided to move on, mainly because this is not an actual project. It's just what I called mini projects throughout this little series here. So I highly doubt it's just a feature item. It's not going to be built upon later in the program. So I'm moving on. I'm burned out of this section. I won't say I'm stuck, because if I spent oodles of time on this, I could scrap it together and figure it out. But I was reading ahead, and we got some big projects coming up or looking ahead, and I don't see a value add in getting stuck here. We've done this before in CSS, so yeah, and so I feel good about it. So I'm just letting you know that, just in full transparency. So with that said, we're going to go through the knowledge check here real quick. Just a few little items. What are some different types of navigation menus? So it takes you out here to this Medium article. And, well, it's through Medium, but it's UX Planet. But anyway, oh, that's the code. I'm not going to show you that. It's a mess. Different types of nav menus. So you have all kinds of different types of navigation menus. You have Tabber, which is a classical slide, kind of like a slide combined with a tab pop-up. You have a rectangular grid menu. These are nothing new. You guys have probably seen these on mobile apps before. You got a drawer nav where it pops down from a corner. You have some of these I've never heard of, but we've seen them. You got a rudder nav where it pops up the bottom there and gives you more things to do. I have a to-do list that any.do actually looks like that, which I use regularly. Excuse me, sorry about that. Got classic nav menu. This is common. I've seen this a lot in mobile apps. And that's about it. So that article just goes over the different types. What are alternatives to the hamburger menus? This opens up a Marvel app, a different website that you go through up here in these links when you're reviewing. And so it goes over the alternatives. You could use tabs, which we've all seen these probably. In fact, my OS, the Android OS I'm on, 10 I think, or 11, whatever, is actually has these tabs at the bottom inside the OS. So that's kind of cool. Tab with a more option. We've probably seen this before. It's kind of like a combination of tab with a hamburger menu that gives you a drop down for more items. And they give you an example. Facebook uses that. Pretty cool article. I'm just skimming through it. Highly recommend you read through it all. Progressively collapsing menus. This is kind of interesting. So the smaller the screen gets, the less buttons you have, but they fall into more. It's kind of a cool thing. And scrollable nav, so you can just swipe over instead of having it collapse. You just swipe over and it'll continue going over until the end. And shows an example of that. Drop down. Are all familiar with that kind of thing. In fact, with mobile menu, we did a couple exercises ago. It is a drop down. Barnes and Noble example, and hamburger menu example, and that's about it. So the third question is, what are the downsides of a hamburger menu? So one of the things I remember, and I think it's in here, so I just don't lead you astray with information here. The downside solution, that's scrollable nav. The main downside of a hamburger menu is its low discoverability. It's recommended to consider one of the alternatives when it comes to designing the main nav. However, when designing secondary nav options, this pattern might be an appropriate solution. So this is the hamburger menu. It's basically, as it looks like, it's a hamburger. It has nothing on it. There's an understanding that the user has an expectation that the user knows that they click on this to get more features or more options and features available to them. So the downside to it is that if they don't have an understanding that's there, they won't ever get to the extra features of your app because that drop down doesn't say what's inside of it. They have to actually click it or touch it with their finger on their phone. So alternatively, an option you could do is something like this, like tabs with a more option. That way they're seeing, you put up here like the tabs, items of the main things you want to draw your user to, maybe most frequently used things or frequently asked for through through UI UX discovery and feedback from the testers, and then you'd hit more and it would bring down the extra, and that's nice to have the more in there because that tells the user also, hey, I've got more options. So if you click here, then it'll be a drop down of the rest of the items that's available. So I guess that's the drawback, is that you don't know what's in more until you click it. So that can be a drawback or a downside. But the plus side is you get to add more function, keep your functionality in there, but it keeps it clean. Doesn't clutter up the main screen with things that maybe aren't clicked as often. Like a lot of times you'll see like profile or settings in here, about, log out, things that generally are not, well, maybe not log out, but like profile, account settings, about, things that aren't clicked on all that often, that aren't used. Oh, here it is right here. I wasn't even looking at it. Statistics, settings, about, contact, things that are important but aren't hit every day. So that would be an advantage to putting that in there. But again, your user has to know that this is available and that's a drop down or a hamburger menu. Traditional hamburger menus don't even have the more, it's just a hamburger menu, so that's really probably more of a downside because they don't know that they can click on that. So I won't belabor that anymore. I feel like I'm going in circles on that. But so the next lesson are going to be going over form validation of JavaScript, and this is also why I wanted, because I looked through this real quick, and this is why I wanted to wrap this up, because we have assignments in here, and then we have practice, warm-up, and a decent sized project to do, and then there is the knowledge check. So there's practice, there's a warm-up to do, basically editing our library project that we did a while back, and then building a project browser form validation. So I knew there was stuff ahead, so I didn't want to get stuck and bogged down in this dynamic UI section. So anyway, hope this was interesting and informative, and a little fun, showing you my crappy design work. But it wasn't. I did this because it wasn't worth showing you guys the code, because it was spaghetti and it was a mess, and I didn't feel like the example I had was good practice. So I'm actually going to delete my project from GitHub and just delete this all together like it never happened. So, and just move on. So sometimes you just gotta do that and understand your strong point. I feel like I've got this visual UI down for now. Plus we have a ton of especially for these type of features, there's a ton of libraries and solutions for npm out there, and there's Bootstrap that have all these integrated things in it anyway. So realistically, you're probably not really going to be creating, in a real world scenario, you're not going to be creating this stuff from scratch anyhow. So they're just giving it to you to practice on. So as it says in the text. But so you guys are free to, if you're following me, don't feel like you got to quit on it. Go ahead and give it a shot and let me know in the comments section how you ended up with it. So anyway, won't make this video any longer, so please like, share, and subscribe for more content. And with all that said, till next time, see ya.